Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me on this episode of Nature and Science Podcast. I'm your host, Don Murphy. On this episode, I'll talk about the recent indiscriminate and unconscionable firing of many National Park Service employees. So, why me? I've had a 40-year career in park and recreation management, from a field ranger to deputy director of the National Park Service. Over my long career, I've led many government efficiency programs. I'm here to explain that what is going on now is not government efficiency. But I'm not going to argue this from an economic or efficiency perspective, rather from a moral and ethical perspective. So I will begin by saying that these indiscriminate firings are illegal. Why illegal? Not because some codified law is being violated, rather because a higher moral law is violated. That law is rooted in the human responsibility of stewardship, the care and love for our natural and cultural resources, seeks to resolve what E.O. Wilson called the great paradox. That is, the natural proclivity of human beings to expand and develop, while at the same time conserving and protecting the resources needed for development and expansion. This is the great challenge of stewardship, and our national parks represent humanity's attempt to resolve this paradox. When we speak of the benefits of parks, it is in these terms that we must speak. It's dangerous to define the importance of parks and conservation only in terms of the monetary economic benefit. We must not simply try and make the value of parks and conservation fit within the context of a market economy. We must understand that the benefits of parks and conservation are more than a commodity in the marketplace. Rather, they are an important part of the creative processes of the universe. Franklin Roosevelt noted, and I quote, "There is nothing so American as our national parks. The scenery and the wildlife are native. The fundamental idea behind the parks is native. It is, in brief, that the country belongs to the people, that it is in process of making for the enrichment of the lives of us all. The parks stand as the outward symbol of the great human principle." Unquote. I submit that parks are not just a symbolic value, but a fundamental value to what makes America great. What price could we possibly place on our parks as living symbols of the greatest of all democratic principles? When you speak and protest to your congressional leaders, tell them that the value of the biodiversity within our parks speaks to the evolutionary processes of life of which we are all part. Tell them that the spiritual connectedness we feel when we visit a redwood grove is of value because it reminds us of our origins and our responsibility to the earth. Tell them that the bonding that takes place when families camp together is of value because healthy families are the foundation of a healthy society. Tell them that environmental education is of value because knowledge of the conservation ethic will lead to respect for the land and all creatures. And what about the memories we take with us from these special places and experiences we've all had in our historical and cultural parks? They are of value because they remind us of who we are and of our responsibility to be good stewards. They remind us of the legacy of the fight for civil rights and human rights. We must remind them of their responsibility to ensure that all people have the opportunity to pursue freedom and happiness. Our national parks are a major contributor to a healthy society. Frederick Law Olmsted noted in his report to the California legislature on the importance of Yosemite National Park more than a century ago, and I quote, "It is the main duty of government, if it is not the sole duty of government, to provide means of protection for all its citizens in the pursuit of happiness against the obstacles otherwise insurmountable, which the selfishness of individuals or a combination of individuals is liable to interpose to that pursuit." It is a scientific fact, he goes on to say, that the occasional contemplation of natural scenes of an impressive character, particularly if this contemplation occurs in connection with relief from ordinary cares, change of air, change of habits, is favorable to the health and vigor of men and women, and especially to the health and vigor of their intellect beyond any other conditions which can be offered them. That it is not only gives pleasure for the time being, but increases the subsequent capacity for happiness and the means of securing that happiness. Unquote. So whether you stand amidst the grandeur of Yosemite National Park or within the shadow of Martin Luther King at the Martin Luther King National Monument, you are standing within the hallowed sphere of the best kind of stewardship. The ultimate value of our parks is that they remain as original sparks of creation. They contain the essence of the creative process, a process described by Richard Dawkins in his brilliant book, The Blind Watchmaker. This process, called cumulative selection, is nature's search engine that finds out of all the infinite possibilities the living creatures most fit to survive. Dawkins rightly asserted that this process is indistinguishable from creativity. I would challenge any economist to put a price on this process. It has given us the prokaryotes and eukaryotes, which came together in only what can be called a spirit of cooperation to form the cells which gave rise to complex life forms, leading to the mighty redwood trees, the dinosaurs, the flowering plants, the peregrine falcon, and finally to human beings, whose chief duty on earth is to care for all life. A recent scientific paper in the journal Science by Jonathan Zare and Kyoto Hagino has demonstrated definitively for the first time how this process evolves. In many ways, our park rangers and park maintenance workers and thousands of volunteers are the happy warriors fighting to provide the most sacred kind of stewardship. Their deeds of stewardship predict a future full of hope and optimism that we can leave behind a better world. They are a rare combination of the poetic and scientific, guided by the human heart and the spiritual soul leading humanity to what I call the great never-ending. So let us not be complacent. Call and write your congressional representatives, or better yet, show up at their offices and protest. We are all called to be good stewards of the earth. We are all living a true miracle. Don't leave things to those few callous souls whose eyes are dimmed by greed and whose souls have been crushed under the weight of their own egos. We are called to be good stewards of our natural and cultural resources, and that includes caring for one another. So don't leave those dedicated National Park Service employees hanging. As Martin Luther King noted, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. And nothing matters more than our stewardship of the earth. So lift up your voices and be heard. Thank you for joining me on this special episode of Nature and Science Podcast. If you want to help our national parks, please contact your congressional representatives and share this podcast with your friends and family. Please hit that like button, and you can leave a comment at natureandsciencepodcast.com. In our next episode, we'll be joined by a former colleague and seasonal National Park Service Ranger, Roseanne McHenry. Roseanne will share what it's like to be a seasonal ranger and the service and how the service is going to be impacted by the recent firing of seasonal employees. So go to our website at natureandsciencepodcast.com and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. As always, stay safe, share happiness, and remember, never stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing.